What's going on, guys? Welcome back to a brand new episode. Coach Joe here with Heartletics.com. And this is probably going to be part one to several different episodes where we're going to be going mainly into the mentality of creating sustainable habits, creating sustainable results. Obviously, anybody that's going through their health and fitness journey knows that, hey, it's not as easy as just like eating more protein, drinking water, and just getting some steps in. There's curveballs, right? That might be injuries. That might be stress. That might be different things going on at home. And so in today's episode, we're just going to kind of go over how to deal with some of those curveballs that life throws your way. Jimmy, you mind taking the floor here, brother, and kind of sharing a little bit about, what happens when life throws curveballs, how to stick with it and how to have that mentality to stick with the goals?
Absolutely. So I originally was going to talk about when I injured my shoulder and how I got through that. But I figured, we do these podcasts to give you guys value and anyone else that watches. So I really want to give you value and just share. So maybe you guys can get some value out of it and share anyone else going through a similar situation. So you all seen my transformation, what it is. What you don't know is, the trials and tribulations that I've been through this process. About not right as my first 12 weeks was ending, when I lost 75 pounds, and I was on the highest of highs. Something happened that brought me way down, and that was I found out something. I started having marital problems, and the person I've been with for 20 years I found wasn't that same person, and betrayed my trust, and without getting into deep details, broke my heart and crushed me. But anyway, that happened as I was at the highest of highs, and man, it took me by surprise, and it brought me to my knees, to the point where I set a call up with Coach Joe with the intention of quitting and stopping. I didn't want to do it anymore. And on that call with Coach Joe, we talked, and he, during that talk, I changed he changed my mind and, changed my focus, to, trying to get over this and the mindset and stuff like that. So I did get over, I was able to move on and continue on. And then, I became a coach, and a lot of good things were happening, and, marriage was still not great. We were figuring things out, but recently, things took a turn for the worse again. And, once again, I really took a hit to the gut, and, I had so many different emotions, anger, just pain. And I wasn't thinking about quitting this time. It was more of, I don't know, but I do know that this time, I know I've talked to some of you guys about this in the Spartans group. You guys were great, giving me a lot of support. And that's part, if I did not have this and going through this situation, I honestly don't know what would happen or where I'd be, or if, I'd be able to deal with it. But, I was hurting bad, and I turned to my family, my Heartletics family, to help me. And they did. I know I was really angry one day, and I talked to Coach Joe, Coach Mark. Coach Joe, gave it to me straight. He kind of smacked me in the face a little bit, woke me up, and kind of got my head on straight, about what is really important. I can't control anybody else or what anybody else does. I can only control, my thoughts and my mind and how I respond to things. And, another thing is my kids are watching how I respond to this, how I act, how I lead. And those are all things that, Coach Joe helped me realize and brought me to a point where obviously, it's painful and you got to deal with the pain. You can't, there's no way around it. You can try to push it off. You can try to hide and go to your bed and lay there and curl up in a ball and think everything's just going to go, but you have to deal with it. I realized you have to deal with the pain. You have to have hard conversations. And you have to lift yourself up by the bootstraps, and all those habits that you learned and instilled in yourself, you got to keep them going. But I mean, I'll be real with you. There's days, where I didn't go to the gym and I didn't have my nutrition, and, I was in my own head, and that's okay. Because I needed to go through that. I needed to go through the pain. I needed to feel it, and I needed to get over it and realize that, I'm in control. I know what I have to do, and I need to get better every day. That's my purpose. And, I need to show my kids that I can't just cower and things will work out how they work out. As long as I'm getting better every day, I'm moving forward, I'm dealing with the pain, I'm feeling what I feel, and I'm reaching out when I'm having a problem. I mean, Coach Mark, you guys, the family is the biggest part, how you can get through something like this, the community. Some people may be strong enough to deal with it on their own, but I'm not. I don't know too many people that would be without some kind of help. But, I have Coach Mark checking on me a few times a week, seeing how I'm doing, Coach Joe. And I just, I have everything there I need to get over this. And, this week I got back on track. I hit the gym, non-negotiables, man, hitting the gym every day, hitting my protein goal, hitting my 10,000 steps in my water. They're non-negotiables for me. And I hit it every day this week. So, still something I'm going through, but I'm able to deal with it. I'm able to get through it, and I'm able to keep, get myself back on track and keep going. And I know what the ultimate goal is for me and what my ultimate purpose is. And I may be going through this pain now, but there's a reason why I'm going through that. I believe that God put me in these situations for a reason. He put me in Heartletics for a reason, and I'm going to get through this, and my life's going to go on, and I'm going to succeed. I'm going to be happy, and I know all that's going to happen. I'm going to help Heartletics change 1 million lives. That's what my purpose is.
Jimmy, I love that so much, because one, it shows really the maturity of like where you've been and what you're going through, and most importantly, where you're going, man. Because like, think about that. The last thing you said was, I know I'm getting better in the end. I know I'm getting stronger in the end, right? I know where I'm going. That's unshakable confidence. Through the midst of all the pain, you're showing unshakable confidence. And first and foremost, let's backtrack. Thank you, right? Because that's very hard to admit. Now, everybody on this call, maybe they haven't been through, something with their spouse, but everybody's had their heart broken, right? Probably multiple times in their life. And if you look back to one of your, horrible breakups, what is it like, guys? It sucks. You don't want to eat, or if you do want to eat, I bet you it ain't protein, right? Like, you want comfort food. So it's tough. But you kind of heard that, through the midst of everything, Jimmy didn't respond or react. He took a step back. He said, okay, hey, my bubble that I'm in right now, it's just got shaken up. This sucks. But what resources do I have? He set up some weekly calls with me, helped him through it, progressing. And then obviously, we had that one chat, which most of you guys have listened to the podcast that's entitled How to Make Your Life Better. And everybody said, dude, what were you on that day? Like, you're in a whole different vibe. That's because I made that because of Jimmy. I simply say, Jimmy, if in case I'm ever not here, listen to this podcast. It's going to motivate you. It's going to help you out big time. And that was the intentions for that. So I love hearing the unshakable confidence behind it all, but you hit the nail on the head, man, with what you said was it's all going to work out in the end. It's a reason I'm going through this. Instead of you saying, why me? Instead of you saying, try me, because you're strong enough to handle it. This is awesome, man. And when we go over here in a little bit, what I'm going to kind of talk about, I think it's going to give you even more reassurance as well as everybody else that's tuning in. Mark, what about you, brother?
Yeah, I mean, life has good times and bad times. That's part of life. And both of those things can kind of derail you if you don't have, sustainable habits, in either direction. So, I mean, Jimmy kind of hit the nail on the head when he was talking about non-negotiables. Those non-negotiables have to follow through whether you're going off track because of something good or you're going off track because of something bad. For example, to take it in both directions, right? Lately I've been traveling a lot to see colleges with my son, and it's awesome. It's a great experience for him, for me, but that takes you out of your standard routine. It takes you out of, your standard availability of what the food is and stuff. But for me, like, it's non-negotiable that these are this is the way I eat, and so I make it work. I make it work by preparing for the road. We bring some shakes with us or some protein heavy treats or whatever. Make it work by even though we're on the road, you can choose. You don't have to stop at McDonald's. You can stop at places that have other options, or if you do only have McDonald's, you don't have to have just the fries and you pick and choose and make it work for you based on where you're at. We've talked a million times, but I'll just throw it out there again. I went on a cruise, right? A week of nonstop, food and fun, and it was an awesome time. But I hit the gym every morning before I did all the fun stuff because I felt like that was A, something I wanted to do, and B, it gave me the freedom to do more, other things throughout the day, knowing that I had kind of started the day on the positive foot. Same thing with the eating. I kind of made sure I enjoyed myself. It was a vacation. I wasn't going to be completely strict and not enjoy myself, but I did it sensibly and, came off that cruise lighter than I got on it. But, there are bad times too. I mean, through my transformation process, we've had, unfortunately, Jen's mom became ill and then, passed away. That leads also to lots of situations that are kind of outside of your control, running to hospitals, running to, take care of things that, aren't at, your scheduled control, so to speak. But, if you make things non-negotiable, even in those instances where you're kind of running and doing, emergency things, you just make it work, hospital cafeterias, right? You think, oh, what am I made it work. I found stuff that fit my non-negotiables, because whichever, I remember talking to you, Coach Joe. It was right around the time, I was first becoming a coach. And it was also right around that time that things started to take a turn with Jen's mom. And I remember talking about, I have this like weird duality where, like, on the one hand, like, I'm really excited about this. On the other hand, we have this horrible, experience going on. And you said to me, and point blank, and I'll never forget this. You said, that is life, right? You've got the good and the bad, and you got to take both and roll with it. And that's something that I've held on to, because whichever way it's going, the good and the bad, your habits are your habits, and you got to keep them sustainable and keep them moving forward. Because the other thing that I'll say is there's a feeling of pride and excitement, when you have that success or when you maintain that success, that to me trumped the temporary joy that you get from not hitting those habits. And I was able to hold on to that and say, you know what, maybe this is not convenient at the moment. Maybe it's a little tougher for me to eat right or exercise today because of everything that's going on, but I get so much pride and so much joy out of seeing the path that I'm on, that it's worth it to have that little bit of inconvenience now to have that payoff later. And that has really kind of served me throughout this whole process is, what is going to get me what I'm looking for in the end? What is going to continue to provide that feeling?
Yeah. I love it. And I do remember that conversation, man. I think I remember told you like it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. I remember like it's always like three things, right? One after another, snowball effect. And you guys know that. Everybody knows that, right? Like that's life. Anytime you're doing something where you're on the course to progressing and improve on your life, life's going to test you, right? And remember, it's all about how you see things differently. Make those mental reps. You go to the gym to train your muscles, right? You're doing the reps to be more disciplined and stronger. Make these the reps of life, where at the end of the day, like it's a blessing in disguise. Jimmy, it's a blessing in disguise, right? It's one of those things where I'll say this real quick before I use my little analogy. I had a conversation, qualification call, right? Even though I don't even do those anymore. I did one, right, the other day. And the gentleman told me about a very similar situation to yourself, Jimmy, right? And it's all about creating better leadership habits. And I told him about rewriting the story. Most of you guys know about rewriting your story, right? And the importance of that. So what I told this gentleman was, hey, don't just do it to create better habits and be better leadership for your kids. Think longevity. Imagine if your kids are going through the same situation that you're going through right now. What would you want to tell them? Well, guess what? They're not going to listen to you, right? Because your actions speak louder than your words. So what are you going to show them? In the midst of all the pain, what are you willing to do to step up? And I think there's a lot of merit to that guys don't know. And so that's why today I want to bring you guys some presentations, not only a PowerPoint, which hopefully fingers crossed that works with the Zoom recording, but I share this all the time recently on some of the podcasts. And guys, it's a simple analogy of success. And you can put anything that you want up there. That could be a better relationship. That could be a better career. That could be getting off your medications. That could be, losing 50 pounds. It could be anything. But you got to understand that underneath the surface, there's a lot that you don't see, right? And what you don't see is also what's called grit, willpower, dedication, because these aren't exactly easy things like late nights, rejections, sacrifice, discipline, criticism, doubts, risk, failures. But eventually, as you guys know, like the harder it is, the stronger it's going to be at the top. Okay. So now with that being said, let's do a screen share. And would one of the coaches let me know if they could see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
Sweet. Awesome. So guys, this is called the fat loss vehicle of life. Okay. And obviously we have Coach Brian here. We also have one of my favorite sports cars, which is a Viper SRT10. I'm not a car guy at all, but there's like sentimental value to this because growing up, my dad got me, I think, a PlayStation 1, and it was a race car game. And like, it was just the very first video game I ever played, and the car was cool because it had white stripes. But regardless, this is going to be, hopefully, fingers crossed, the thing that kind of sticks out where it sticks, right? Tell you guys about calories, and we use the analogy about a glass of water. Wow, it's super easy, right? It sticks. That's what Heartletics is. Keep it simple, stupid. Because if it's very easy, like a little analogy of like this, guess what? It's going to be more retainable. It's going to be more sustainable in the end. That's what I want, right? That's the, hopefully, fingers crossed, right? What's going to happen with this presentation. So let's go on to the car, okay? First off, you guys, everybody knows this, right? You got to make sure you're eating plenty of food. Most people think that they're just, putting in a bunch of food and they're spilling over, right? That, they're eating way too much portion control. But realistically, it's that they're under eating. They're not eating enough, right? And so this analogy is going to go both ways to help you guys with the understanding of how fat loss works, but the fat loss journey itself. Remember, this is the vehicle of life, which means that like life, fat loss, success, career, relationships, it's all kind of intertwined. And hopefully, once again, this all makes sense. So food equals fuel. Guys, just make sure you eat enough food. Okay. It's just the same way that your car needs gas to get it from point A to point B. But understand this. Has anybody ever been driving before and they get stuck in traffic? Sure, everybody has, right? Has anybody been driving before and next thing you know, like where they were going, there was a detour or a roadblock? They had different ways? Of course. Okay. Now, has anybody ever, let's say, driven in, let's say, I don't know, a snowstorm or a rainstorm or some kind of conditions where it was, hey, 2 at 10, like you were kind of scared, but at the end of the day, you didn't give up, right? You continue to push through. Has that ever happened? I'm sure once again, most people. So think about this, right? Health and fitness, right? Let's relate this to fat loss. Well, at the end of the day, Coach Brian, for example, he didn't go through all sunshine and rainbows. For example, as I zoom in here, you guys can see, like, yeah, he started off at 250, but like, look, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight. Like, look at the trends. Okay. So your roadblocks of fat loss are very similar to you driving a car. Maybe you're stuck in traffic. Maybe there's a detour. What are life's detours? Maybe it's stress. Maybe your kid's not listening to you. Maybe it's an injury. Maybe you're traveling. Maybe it's whatever the case may be, it's anything, it's life. But, right, a GPS is going to tell you, okay, hey, maybe take a detour, or maybe continue to do this, or maybe do this, and you will eventually get there. Very similar, right, to your fat loss journey, at least what happened with Coach Brian. He didn't give up. He did similar things that most guys talk about, talking in the community groups, asking questions, reaching out to the coaches for support. And you can see through all these ups and downs trends, guess what? He reached his goal all the way down here, below 170 pounds. Was it constantly, right, losing weight? Absolutely not. And it's here's the thing, right? This is the reality for everybody, unless you're Mark. Mark just always loses weight. But most people, right, they're going to go through some storms, right? They're going to go through some hail. They're going to go through, some snow. There's going to go through, like, it's going to be bad weather conditions, but you got to keep on driving. Okay. So one of the biggest tips that can help you out is think about the passengers, right? You're all driving a car. Jimmy, you're a bus driver, right? You're picking up people, right? You guys got to understand, like, life's metaphor is the same way about, like, driving a car. It's same thing with fat loss, same thing with success and anything, right? So maybe you're picking up some passengers, and you know what? It's like Karen in the back just yelling at you, like, oh, I just stops too soon, or you didn't use your blinker, or hey, put on your seatbelt, like I don't want to hear a blink, or whatever, right? And telling you to where, telling you to go here, telling you to go here. Well, at the end of the day, right, Karen, right, she's not the GPS. Karen also might tell you to do one thing that maybe hey, at the end of the day, what's best for you and where you're trying to get to, but you decide to listen to Karen. And maybe that takes you into a different approach in life. Maybe that takes you to a different road, right? But at the end of the day, understand this, right? Whether you take a left, whether you take a right, no matter what, you're only one decision away from still reaching the destination that you want in life, in terms of fat loss, in terms of career success, anything like that. Now, who's the Karens in your life? Well, I always say it, right? I hate to be offensive, but look at the people you're hanging around with the most. Like, if you're hanging around with people that don't care about themselves, they don't want to be active, they don't want to eat healthy, they don't want to improve on themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, anything like that, you become like the sum of the 5 people that you hang around with the most. So think about it in terms of your environment. The bodies and our brains and how we're designed is made to adapt. If you take a child that's 3 years old, like my son Oakley, and you put him in Italy, right, for the next 10 years, and then give him back to me, I bet you anything he's going to be fluent in Italy or in Italian, right? That's because we're made to adapt, guys. That's how our brains are made to survive. So don't get too comfortable in your comfort zone. Remember, right? We're made to adapt. It's okay to push through, but understand when you push through, there's going to be some adversity. Just like fat loss, right? It's going to go up. It's going to go down. Now, this is where it really relates to fat loss, because this is where I really wanted to just hit home for most people, okay? Brian had a decision to decide to sign up for coaching or not, right? He kind of knew that where he was at with high blood pressure, lacking energy, lacking confidence, trying everything under the sun that everybody told him to do, except for a coach, he knew it was only hurting him in the end. Right? He knew that where he was going, he said it was costing him more staying the same than not progressing. He knew it was taking him to the graveyard, right? The junkyard. Let me ask you a question, guys. Like, how many people in your life are taking you right here that you don't even think about it? Honestly, like, there are probably people in your life that are heading this direction right now, and you don't even know it, but yet you're constantly around these people. I'm not trying to say kick out your friends, right? Don't talk to your homies. Like, I'm not saying that at all. But at the end of the day, like, pick and choose. Like, Jimmy had so much support in Spartans. Guess what? That helped him through a very hard time in his life. There's really pick and choose. Who would you go out to war with? The guys that, you know, you're watching the sports games with, the guys you're chugging the beers with, like, think in terms of that, because every single day as a man, it's a battle zone. It's a war field, right? Not just physically, but most importantly, mentally. And that's what Heartletics is giving you guys the tools to succeed mentally. Obviously, Brian, right? Once again, lots of hurdles, lots of ups and downs, right? All this, but amidst, he continued to push through. Just like the success, right? At the very top of the iceberg, you got to sometimes go through hell to get to heaven, right? Now, whether that's just burning some body fat, having more energy, getting off your blood pressure meds, or anything in life, you're going to have to go through some adversity. But the moral of the story is, don't give up. You're going to get that car at the end of the day. I mean, that's the facts, right? But what you did not hear me say from this presentation was that it was going to be easy by any means, right? But here's what happens when you decide to choose the hard things, okay? So Brian got the car, right? The best part is that Brian learned, obviously, when to make maneuvers, different traffic stops, detours, right? Stopping off to go get gas when needed to recharge his batteries. He took care of his car. Brian's also not a dummy. Like, Brian's like, hey, my car's broken. I'm not a mechanic. I need to take my car into a vehicle. Most guys live their life and they never take their bodies into a mechanic. They only think they know, right? Because maybe they played some video games or did something about, oh, I could do it like this. It's not that easy, guys. And I'm not trying to paint the picture, say it's hard, but obviously, you know, from when you first got signed up with coaching, most guys eating a lot more food in our program than when they were before. And you start gaining weights, but then eventually you start burning more body fat, right? We know the trends. We know how metabolism works, but putting this back to getting like this and getting like this, why is it so important? Well, at the end of the day, Brian didn't end up like this, right? Most people end up like this, and they don't understand that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? So now Brian was able to turn his body into this, was able to teach his son the importance of taking care of it, walking, habits, protein, push-ups, different things like that. By Brian focusing on himself, guess what? Everybody succeeds, because Brian was selfish, because Brian put the ego to the side and said, like, hey, I need a mechanic, right? He also had a lot of support on this journey. So the biggest takeaway from this presentation is that, hey, it's hard losing weight. It's hard being overweight, right? But like, you get to decide how hard you want it. Always choose your heart. You know, it's going to be hard regardless, but the biggest things, going off to what Jimmy said and obviously what Mark said, is like, one, you got to have that support. You got to have that community. You got to have that accountability. Like, the people that's in your corner, these are the people that's going to help you through the hard, like the hard times, especially. You know, imagine, I say it like this all the time when it comes down to community. It's the World Series. Okay, let's say it's tied 0-0. You're up to bat, right? And then all of a sudden the pitch comes in, you hit a home run. Jimmy, you're obviously a huge Phillies fan. What would you do if you were up to bat, you were on the Phillies, right? It was the World Series, the last game, the last inning, the last pitch, you hit a home run. How would you feel?
Feel ecstatic, on top of the world.
Yeah. Now let me ask you another question. What if no fans cheered for you? What if no teammates even acknowledged you? What if no coaches even like said high five or gave you a high five or even said good job? And that bus ride home, nobody even said a word to you. Would it still feel that good?
No, it would feel very horrible.
Would you continue to play that game and play for that team year after year if that was always going to be the outcome?
No.
You would eventually quit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So guys, let's bring this right back to what coaching is, right? With that little analogy right there with the World Series. A coach, right? Me, Mark, Jimmy, Brian, Katrina, all the other coaches, right? You guys signed up for baseball practice. It's our job to make sure that you show up to baseball practice, right? We're making sure that you're holding the ball differently, maybe sitting back on that hit a little bit, right? We're figuring out those small little tweaks with the nutrition, with the training, with the mindset, especially. You know what we're not doing? we're not making you guys practice dribbling a basketball and shooting 3 throws. That's a whole different sport. We're just trying to figure out what are those small tweaks to make with you guys. But also realize this, that when you're in the middle of the World Series, right? And let's say life comes out of nowhere and throws you a curveball. Well, what if that's a different picture that you're not prepared for? Well, all of a sudden, hey, the coaches made sure that you showed up for practice. The coaches are also there. Hey, time out. Come back over here. Let's whisper in your ear some secrets. Go back there. Wait a few seconds, right? Swing it. You hit a home run. Best part is everybody's cheering for you, right? All the coaches are happy for you. All the fans are there. Guess what? It makes it a lot easier to show back up because there's that reward mechanism. Put it in terms of fat loss. How many guys continue doing the same old? There's no community. There's no support. Life throws them curveballs. Guess what? They strike out, but this time they give up. They go back to their old ways, go back to feeding the bad wolf. Going back to what Mark said, guys, this is all easy when you do what's sustainable, right? That's it. Like figuring out like what is enjoyable and what happens when you are doing things that you enjoy doing. It's way easier to stick with it, but you become a better leader in the process. That's what Heartletics is. And like, you guys are going to understand this, that like that analogy I gave you with Brian, that little success diagram, that's with anything, guys, like career, fat loss, relationship, finances. It's going to be hard. You know, I don't know many people that are, you know, millionaires that didn't work hard for it, but I do know a lot of people, at least you read about them all the time, people that win the lottery, and guess what? They go broke within the first 3 years. Why? They don't have the habits. So it's just like through our coaching program, we're just trying to help you guys with what are these habits? Because you guys are always going to have life and stress and curveballs thrown your way. But guess what? Mark made some adjustments when he was on vacation. You know, Jimmy, he was going through a lot of adversity with his family. Guess what? He reached out for support. That's a huge resource, you know? So at the end of the day, remember guys, this is only going to be like part 1, because we're still going to dive into nutrition tips on another podcast, training tips, and we got to bring it back around to mindset. But the reason why we talk about the mindset first is because it's like anything we talk about Heartletics. Once you change your mind, that's when your body starts to change. So Jimmy, Mark, you guys want anything to say, wrap things up before we close?
Just that the one thing I didn't touch on, but that, you know, you guys did, community, community, having that support behind you to help you, to cheer you on. It's invaluable.
Yeah. I agree with Mark. Yes. Second it.
Cool. So guys, that's it for the podcast. You know, understand this, like make it bittersweet. It's how you decide to choose your heart, right? There's always going to be 2 types of pain. There's going to be the pain of discipline, which, you know, hey, it weighs ounces, right? It's a lot easier to sleep in on a cold winter day and stay in those blankets than get up and do a morning routine, or get up and go for a walk, or get up and go to the gym. It's a lot easier to sleep in, but it's a lot harder, right? And they always say that the pain of regret weighs tons compared to the pain of discipline, which weighs only ounces. So years down the road, hey, bad health, bad habits, you see your kids falling through in your footsteps. Guess what? Like that's a harder pain than dealing with just waking up early. It doesn't have to be hard. What makes it a lot easier is having support. And obviously what you guys are doing right here is by joining these weekly Zoom chats, engaging the community groups, because guess what? You get to see other guys that are no different from you and how they succeed. And it's just like the Robert Bannister example, we're in the 4-minute mile. You know, as soon as that happened, boom, within the same year, 128 people were able to run once again a 4-minute mile when everybody thought it was impossible. It's all about breaking those self-limiting beliefs. And you just got to give yourself some credit, right? Like this analogy right here, I'm sure everybody's been through a breakup, right? You realize, hey, you had to go through a lot of pain, but where you're at right now with your spouse or relationship that you're with, you're probably happy that that old chick, like you had a bad relationship with. And once again, this can be used for anything. It's all about just looking at terms differently on how you see it. So guys, hopefully you guys got some value. If you did, share this on maybe your Facebook or share this with your friend. As always, guys, this has been Coach Joe, Coach Jimmy, Coach Mark, and this has been the Heartletics Podcast. And as always, guys, we'll talk to you next time. Peace out, Girl Scouts.